Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Buell. I'm a graduate student at CU Boulder, and I'm one of the board members for The Assembly. It's a journal for public scholarship on education. And I'm here today with Dr. Stephanie Cariaga, who is a founding member of the People's Education Movement.
I believe the People's Ed started in 2012. It was actually a really kind of special time for me because I just decided to quit teaching. I had been a teacher, an English teacher for 6 years, and building with different folks and working primarily in Watts, South LA. And I just remember working with really awesome colleagues. This woman, Jerica Coffey, who I worked with at Locke High School, just asked me, like, do you want to, and also Carolina Valdez also approached me and asked me if I wanted to join like this new group that they were creating. And so it happened to be a bunch of educators, a few administrators, some folks like myself who were not in the classroom anymore, and just really wanted to come together to create a space that created like real professional development for us. We were tired of just focusing on the standards or being super apolitical or not really just driven by the needs of the communities and all of the things that were coming up in our classrooms. And also just realizing like how toxic of a space it was for us ourselves, and that we really needed a space of healing. And so we came together that summer. We did a lot of reading together, and we figured out that we really wanted to center like a decolonial praxis of teaching. And so we really wanted to start with this idea of schooling as a colonial project, that it was not designed for us, it was not designed for our students or our communities. And so how do we combat that in our classroom spaces, but also outside of our spaces? And so it was really important for us to create an autonomous space. And it was modeled after different organizations that we had been part of. And so eventually, after creating our mission, our vision, building a lot of relationships with each other that summer, we had our first general meeting. And so from there to now, it's still around. The structure kind of changed a little bit this year, but in general, we have general meetings for everyone to come together. And usually it's about any topic, political education topic, maybe around collective care, or maybe around what was happening with the UTLA strike that just happened this year. And just getting, really building up our knowledge of what was going on. And then we also had another structure, the teacher inquiry group, that also met monthly. And so it's divided into two different parts. The first hour is where folks get together and we read some scholarly article that's really grounded in our own values around liberatory spaces, around sustainability, around transformative justice, around the decolonial practice. And so we would read that, really unpack what that means and what the implications are for us as educators, and what the tensions are on the ground. And then the second half would be where an educator would provide a presentation on a unit or a lesson or an idea, and then they would get feedback. So that's the general TIG structure. And then the other piece that I think is really special to us, and given our context. So again, we really wanted to focus on healing and wellness. And so we created a working group around that as well. And so part of the general meetings, we would also have working group time. And so we figure out, what do we need as a collective? And so some of us were like, well, we just really need to move our bodies, and so we would go on hikes. We would facilitate circles, community circles for each other. And it's branched off into different things, but and then we would also start general meetings with centering and mindfulness and really coming back into our bodies. Because the other thing that we recognized was that part of the toxicity in our schools is that we don't actually get to be whole, right? We don't actually get to bring our bodies in or be aware of our bodies and be aware of the impact that teaching has on us. And so we wanted to really bring that back into our space as well. And so, yeah, those are the general structures. And from there, one of the other big pieces was that we would do a curriculum fair every year for folks to really kind of share their practices, their lessons, their ideas. And then we added another healing and wellness component where we had practitioners come and you could do massage, you could get Reiki done, you could do different things. And so those, I think, are some good ideas about how those things come together. I think one of them is just like figuring out what your values are, because I think that's what that summer really was, what that summer was about when we first got together. Like, what do we really care about? What do we really see on the ground? What are the different problems that we're navigating, and what do we really need? And what is something that we want to really create for ourselves? And being really unapologetic about, like, yes, we are serving the students, but what is it that we need so that we can then serve our students, you know? And so I think it's about that. It's about bringing in folks that you really trust. I think part of what we realize is that when we're in different spaces, we're navigating conflict, we're navigating all these different things, these different ideologies. And so it becomes much of a more safer space to actually build solidarity with folks who get it, and that you don't have to explain things to. And so I think that's one piece. And I think I'm also learning over the years that it really is okay to start small. Like, it doesn't, I think when you think about organizing, we automatically want to like scale things, but I've been reading a lot of like Adrienne Marie Brown stuff, and she says that, you know, build at the speed of trust, right? And that's, I would say, a much more decolonial way of being versus trying to like produce all the time, right? And so I think it's just figuring out who are your people and who do you want to build with, and then really coming together and figuring out what is that ideological lens that you're going to approach your work with. And then I think that's why TIG works so well, is that because we're always really hungry to read and unpack things and read theory and apply it to our own practice. And then just being open to feedback. Like, I think finding folks who really want feedback, finding folks who want to grow in their practice. And I feel like that's, out of all the structures, I think in People's at LA, I think TIG has been the most like strongest piece that has survived over the years and has like really kept its integrity. So those are some ideas about how you can start a TIG. Step one, find your people. And if it's just like another person, I think two people is good enough, right? And then I think find your people, and then two, figure out what your ideological lens is going to be, and then find readings, find scholarship, find organizations that are aligned with you, and just really use that as a space for you to build your own learning, right? To build your own professional development. And then I think just meeting on a monthly basis is worth it. And I just knowing that, you know, I think the other thing I want to say is that it doesn't have to be a work thing. Like, it doesn't have to feel like you have to do it every single time. I think you can just do it when it feels good to you. I think one thing that we emphasize in People's at LA is sustainability. And so, you know, maybe 1 month you meet and then you realize that meeting on a monthly basis is too much for you, right? So really figuring out what is sustainable to you, but what is also filling you up at the same time. I think the last TIG I wasn't able to attend, but I know that they read an article by a scholar about the difference between brave and safe spaces and building those in the classroom. And so that's one piece. I know we've read other pieces about what decolonial praxis is. It's really just like whoever is interested, whoever has a piece and they're like, let's read this together. So those are some examples. If you go on the peoplesed.org website on the resources link, there's actually a bunch of articles there that TIG has read. And then there was one TIG where I actually presented some work from my own dissertation around healing and wellness and how to develop healing spaces in an English classroom. And so I presented my work, and then I asked folks, you know, this is my dissertation work, but how do I actually teach this in a teacher ed space for folks who are becoming new teachers, right? And so what's cool about TIG is that, you know, we define educators as whoever, right? So it can be in higher ed, it can be different subjects, like there have been science folks that have presented, There have been administrators that have presented. And so it's just really what you want to get feedback on. I mean, I'll be honest, like, and I think other members and peoples can agree that there have been plenty times where we're like, damn, we're tired, and I don't know if I want to show up. But every time we have shown up to a People's Ed space, we feel fed and we feel rejuvenated. I think partly, again, like I said, because you're around folks who get it, and you're around folks who have the same ideologies as you do, and so you feel like you're much more in community. And I think, all of us in People's Ed understand how teaching can actually impact your body, your mind, and your spirit, right? And that if you don't actually take time to build with other folks, if you don't take time to actually check in with your own bodies and your spirits, that you're actually not going to be of best service to your students, right? And when you approach your work with a critical lens, like, you are much more susceptible to different things on your campus, right? And so I think all of the folks who have gravitated towards People's Ed get that. And they understand that we just need to be building with other folks to really heal and to really reimagine and be creative about the things that we want to create. Like, I feel like the best curriculum that I've created and implemented with students is stuff that I've talked about with people in People's Ed. And that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to teach new teachers here at Dominguez Hills, is that it's a collaborative project, right? Curriculum building should also always be in community, and it's better that way. And I would also say that it's still hard. I want to be really transparent in saying that, like, this is stuff that we are not getting financially paid for, right? It's really hard. A lot of us have our own families. A lot of us have our own babies. A lot of us are taking care of things outside of our, like, teaching jobs. And so it's hard, and we have struggled with trying to keep motivated and trying to keep leadership motivated and just trying to build people power, right? But I think at the end of the day, we always recognize that when we do come together, like, it's a space that really does fill us, and it really helps us remember our purpose, and also know that there's a lot of hope out there. So peoplesed.org is the LA chapter's website. You can also look us up on peoples_ed at Instagram. There's another chapter in Peoples in the Bay Area. So if you look up Peoples Bay Area on Instagram, they're also doing amazing things. There are folks in Chicago doing that. And then I can also send a few articles that have been written about different teacher inquiry group spaces by Antonio Martinez, Carolina Valdez, and myself, by Oscar Navarro, and then another one by Farima Porkhorshid, who actually focuses specifically on racial affinity groups, if folks are interested in that. I just want to give a shout out to Antonio Martinez. He was a founding member of People's Ed LA, and he passed away a few years ago. And so, anytime I talk about People's, I do want to remember him and remember his legacy, and that he continues to guide us in our different spaces. And then the other thing I want to share too is that, like, the beauty about People's Ed LA is that it really started as this kind of small endeavor where we would come together on a monthly basis, but now there's such an awesome pipeline of folks who are still in the classroom. There are folks in higher ed, there are folks who are organizing, there are folks who are creating their own projects, and so it's just, like, really beautiful seeing where all the different members of People's Ed LA are at right now.